Tom is a dear, dear friend. And I am very, very proud to offer him this evening the Jim and Lynn Moroney Award. Congratulations, Tom.
This guy's amazing.
Yeah, he's good.
Wow. I feel so blessed to be here. Peter, thank you. Coach Hauser, I feel really honored to be on the same stage with you. Back in the late 60s and early 70s, when you're cutting your teeth on Cistercian students, we had we felt like we had to represent, you know, the dark side of your life, because you weren't going to do it. We knew early on that Coach Hauser didn't even know a bad word, much less would utter one. On a cold fall night in 1972, Greenhill was kicking our butt. And Coach Coombs was, in his calm way, talking to us about some of the things, some of the adjustments we needed to make, and some of the things we needed to do. And then Coach Hauser comes into the locker room. It's halftime. And, you know, we're just trying to thaw out from the first half. And if I didn't know the man, I'd swear he'd been drinking. I mean, he had the wildest look in his face. Man, I want you to go out there. I don't want you to knock Now, the team, we're going. Coach Hauser. He's gonna do it. He is gonna do it, and we are gonna go out and win that game. Coach, go ahead and finish. Go out there and knock the fire out of them. We went, and we got our butts kicked in the second half. Peter, you are such a good guy as well. And Mr. and Mrs. Verhalen, God, I love you. Thank you for giving this world your son.
We've got students here, Tom.
Our freshman year was a special year because it marked the last year we had to ride Mr. Walter's bus. We were going to get our driver's license that next summer. And there was one student a few years behind us who was one pain in the rear on this bus ride. He was always giving us a lot of grief. It was the last day of school. Mr. Walter was in the seat waiting for us to all get on the bus. And that little creek that runs in front of the school, well, Peter and I grabbed this guy. I had his hands, Peter had his feet. We're swinging. We're swinging.
It wasn't me, Tom.
You know, You little runt, we're going to finally get even with you. This is our last bus day, and we want to make sure you don't remember. Don't ever forget it. Now, I'm thinking to myself, Peter, you know, he'll never let go. I mean, the guy's already a saint. He'll never do. So, there's no need of me hanging on. One of us has to let go. I don't know who was more surprised. Me and Peter looked at each other when that guy went flying into the creek. or that guy who came out of that creek throwing mud and everything. Mr. Walter just looked at us and goes, okay, let's go. Now, I was a betting man. Mr. Walter was saying to himself, it's about damn time that kid got there. Abbott Dennis, what a team you have assembled. And I really mean that with a lot of love and a lot of affection, starting with you. Abbott Dennis is the reason I went to Rice University. I had a rather lackluster interview in the spring of my senior year, and Father Dennis came to me and said, you know, you had a rather lackluster interview. And for one of a number of times, I was so thankful for the fire that is in Abbott Dennis. His mild-mannered ways turned the people who were interviewing at Rice around completely. And I had her letter of acceptance the next week. Thank you very much. I also had the pleasure of being president of the student body my senior year, and it was certainly, I don't know if it was your first year, but certainly the early years. But I remember, oh my God, I got to work with Father Dennis. How am I going to do this? I know the class behind me thinks he's the greatest in the world, but I don't really know the man that well. He kind of scares the heck out of me. So those were my private thoughts, and then we met, and I found out very early on why you are so well loved. Thank you, thank you, thank you. When Erin, in her many emails to try to keep up with my crazy schedule, wrote me about the details of this, I asked if there was some way that I could have a second table, and I was prepared to pay for it, and I got this email right back saying, no, second table's no problem. I've got a big family. I'm one of 9 children, and 7 of us are here tonight, and I would say to you, these rowdies over here on the second table, that these are my brothers and sisters, but what I'd like to say to you is that this is the motorcycle gang that I hang out with. There's a motorcycle attached to every seat around that table, and we do get together a couple times a year and have a wonderful time. One of those times is going up to Subiaco with the other Benedictines, each summer, and remembering our parents in a prayerful weekend. And a couple of summers ago, I bumped into Coach Hauser there as well. You're still a good guy. We couldn't tempt you. We tried, Coach, but we just couldn't do it. But thanks to my family for being here. I love you dearly. I love you dearly. I'm reminded my pastor opened this homily once with a family story, so I'll tell it. A young girl was anxious to find out where they came from, where she came from. She went to her father, Dad, where did we come from? And her father said, well, honey, a long time ago there were these monkeys, and they kind of evolved and got smart, and, well, eventually became human beings, and that's kind of where we came from. And so she thought about that and said, well, she wasn't quite satisfied. Went to her mom, Mom, where do we come from? Mom said, "Oh, honey, you know, God created Adam and Eve, and it's a beautiful story. Well, we're children of God, and that's where it all began." The little girl was done. Said, "Mom, I'm totally confused. You say we came from Adam and Eve, and Dad says we came from monkeys." And the mom said, "Well, honey, it's true. Your dad's family came from monkeys." I like to think that we came from Adam and Eve, but sometimes I do wonder, do we maybe come from monkeys? I have a great family, and thank you for your kind words about my father. He did teach me to work hard, and he did teach me the importance of integrity and honesty. And he was a driven man, for sure. My poor mom, a sweetheart of a lady who just upped and moved to Memphis a couple years after Dad died and decided she wanted to be in Memphis for a while. And I had the pleasure of living in the same town as my mom for the last few years of her life. But she was so hesitant about coming to any football game because she was so afraid she was going to see me get hurt. Well, sure enough, she finally decided to take the bus trip to Tyler and watch us play against Tyler Gorman. And on the third play of the game, I get knocked out. Oh, my poor mom. It took her at least another year to come to another game. At my second table, thanks to Aaron, I'd like to recognize a few people as well. I can't really think of Cistercian and family without also thinking of the McGehee family. And Joanne McGehee, one of the surrogate mothers of my life, is here tonight, and her daughter Nancy, her son Michael, of course, one of my classmates. I can see Michael just almost single-handedly beating up on Dallas Christian for our homecoming game. And of course, your beautiful daughter Margaret, my high school sweetheart. The McGehee family was just a great family to me, and still are. And I pray for them daily, for their future, for their health, for their protection, and for the graces that God bestows on all of us. Father Rock. Father Rock, if there was a Tom Lewis dictionary, I'd put Father Rock, unconditional love. Unconditional love definition, Father Rock. We gave you plenty of reasons not to love us. So we tested that theory of unconditional love quite a bit with Father Rock. But I remember you as much and maybe more as for the things that you've done for me and my family since being in school. You got on a bus and came to San Antonio to attend the wedding of me and Kathy. You came to Houston and baptized our first 3 adopted kids, even though I was asking you to consider one of the godparents who were Jewish. And he said, "Oh, Tom, I do a lot of things for you, but don't ask me to do this one, please." Mom and Dad co-signed. That was great. Father Julius, I asked you to be at this table tonight because you were one of the kindest teachers I've ever had. And in particular, I was so proud as a young 6th grader becoming an altar boy under your tutelage. It was when I look back on my life, it was one of the first great accomplishments of my life. And your kind hand and your kind ways made it possible. Thank you. I asked Carolyn and Andy to join us tonight. I'm going to add a few more people to that list of people that I'm going to ask if you all would stand up, the guys that joined us on our mission trip this past summer. But if the Tejan family, where are you? Dr. Tejan, where is you? Are they here? Solomon P.A. Oh, in the back. Solomon, stand up. He's got this beautiful African suit on. Dr. Tejan, would you mind standing up? and your beautiful wife? Are they back there with you? Oh, they had to go. Well, have your seats. Thanks. Solomon's brother is in Liberia and called me a couple days ago. Now, Sam, PA, is the reason Kathy and I are in Sierra Leone. He asked us back in the late 90s as the war was winding down in that country, would you please come to my country? We started going to Africa in 1988, and Sam went with us on several trips to other countries. And he was so anxious for the war to be over and for somebody to come help his country that his big heart and his sweet invitation took us to Sierra Leone in 1999. Well, Solomon, his doctor, is Dr. Tejan, and through that found out about tonight's dinner and celebration, and was decided to come join us. Sam called me and said, hey, my brother's going to be there. My brother Solomon's going to be there. And he was so excited and congratulated me on the opportunity as well. But these people that know Sierra Leone firsthand, and the Burke family, the Murksons, where's Burke and Elise and their daughter Elise and Clint? Please stand as well. They've been there as well. They know Sierra Leone firsthand. All of them have helped, or helping to transform this little village we go to in numerous ways that I will elaborate on momentarily. There's a young lady with us, Elizabeth Kaba, who's also from Sierra Leone, who is a very courageous lady. Her and her family suffered through the war, and there's all kinds of incredible stories of deprivation and sacrifice and wondering where your next meal's coming from and where are we sleeping tonight, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Will we be killed? What are the rebels up to today? And she's been sick for the better part of the last 3 years, and despite collaborative efforts between doctors in Memphis and doctors in Africa, we just couldn't figure out what's going on with this young lady. And so Methodist Hospital in Memphis and a group of doctors agreed that if we could get her there, they would take care of her. And so she's been here in the States for about 3 months. She's had 1 major surgery, all kinds of testing going on. She's definitely on the upswing. She's about 80% finished in her treatment and getting well, and each day seems to be a little better. So Elizabeth, I salute you for your bravery. I'm so glad you're here. I know Mom and Dad are here. I agree with you on that, Peter. And the thought of them having some fun tonight with the Moroneys is a very nice thought. And I feel their presence every day. And Kathy, the love of my life, absolutely my best friend. You are the reason I'm anything. I'm not qualified to carry your luggage, but I love sleeping with you.
We have teenagers here, Tom.
And we live in Memphis, Tennessee, and ever since I've gotten to Memphis, I fancy myself as I can do an Elvis impression, so I'll give you one of them right now, and it's my favorite thing to sing to my wife about how much I love her. So this is my Elvis impression. He kind of does some of this stuff, you know. Anyway, I mean this from the bottom of my heart, because you've taken my heart. Take my whole life too, for I can't help falling in love with you. I love you. I never get any requests to actually do it. I'd like to share a few school memories, and then share with you some of the adult behaviors that I attribute to my roots at Cistercian, and to conclude with a prayer that I will pray twice, which is code for you're going to hear me sing again. But The backdrop I'd like to offer for these next few comments is a question that I've been pondering as I've collected these notes. These men, these Cistercian priests, these monks, these men, why them? Why them? From Hungary. Was it the only way we could have a school in Dallas is for people from Hungary to come and start one? So why them? Keep that in your back of your mind. I'll attempt to shed some light on that question as we go. As far as school memories go, one of my favorites is catching any pass anywhere against any team from Terry Buell. I loved it. I loved catching the balls he would throw me. Father Damien used to hold me in his knee, I'm told, as a 2-year-old toddler. But by the time I got to be eligible for the second form, he went to bat with my parents and said, you know, you really need to get your son here at this school. And my parents couldn't afford it. And so they made a deal that my parents could afford. And God bless Father Damien for doing so. I remember one of the more animated teachers that we had was Father Matthew. And I didn't have any Latin prior to coming to Cistercian. And it's about the second week of school. And Father Damien, the headmaster, the man that, you know, the man that, why I'm here, he visited our Latin class. Now, Father Matthew, you know, you always knew you stood with Father Matthew. You know, if you answered the questions right, if you did well, he says, boy, you are correct. You know? But if he wasn't quite sure you were getting it, or if you didn't quite get the answer right, his hand would start covering, you know, the bottom part of his face. Well, Father Matthew was, there were 6 of us that began in the second form that year, and we all had a lot of catch-up to do, particularly in Latin. And Father Matthew was very anxious to show off how much his new Latin students were learning. So he invited Father Damien to come in and ask us a question. You know, anything. These are great students. I've been teaching them. And so Father Damien said, well, where was Latin spoken? And I'm thinking, this is my chance. This is the man that got me here. I shot my hand up, and Father Matthew was grinning, you know. Go ahead and tell him. Latin America, I said. Here's Father Matthew. I didn't have the benefit of reading his eyes. Oh, poor Father Matthew. As far as adult behaviors that I attribute to my Cistercian roots, I've got 3 of them that I'm going to highlight with all respect and appreciation. The first one I call appreciating God's sense of humor. When we first adopted 3 children, Kathy and I had gone to this adoption agency really thinking that, well, this process takes time. And you know, so a couple of years from now would be just about right for us to be adopting children. I will be finished with my residency training and hopefully having a good paying job by then. And Kathy will be closer to finishing up her medical studies. And that sounds about right. And so we went into this adoption agency. And 2 weeks later, we had 3 children. 2 weeks later. Now, the sense of humor of this is that we actually thought God was calling us to do this. We really did believe that. But we later realized it was just indigestion we were having at that time. We made a little bit of a mistake, but not that we regret any of it. But 5 years later, we were approached to adopt 4 children, And I said, we said yes, and it was really a fun kind of a experience to go through, because that was now a decision of 5 people, not just of the 2 of us. And we all concurred. Oh my gosh, these videos that they showed us of these 4 little children that had been abandoned, similar kind of story to the first 3. They were abused, abandoned, separated. Some really tough stories. But little Mary singing Mary Had a Little Lamb, I think that's the one that really got us as far as looking at these videos. But I pulled the agency aside. I said, as long as you don't come back and just assume that in 5 years from now we're going to be adopting 5 children. I mean, we did 3, we did 4, but this is near the end of it. To some extent, God's sense of humor came to work in us getting into our mission activity. We began our mission work in Africa in 1988. And Kathy finished up her medical training in 1985 and immediately began to start searching out opportunities for doing something that was powerfully important to her, much more important to her than I realized. Going back to her early years of school, when she heard a Marino priest talk about missionary work in Africa, and her desire was truly to be a medical missionary in Africa, and she started gathering information, and she would tell me about it, and I would listen to her, and I was thinking in the quiet of my mind, you know, I don't see how this is going to work, but I didn't say anything because it's like, it never happened, you know. I'll just pat her on the head and tell her she's doing a good job, and kind of hope that it goes away, because you know nothing good can come from it. Well, about I guess it was about January of 1988, about 30 days before she was scheduled to go, I decided, you know, I should buy a ticket because she's really going. God, this isn't funny, you know. I know you're trying to tease me about this a little bit, but this is not funny. I thought, well, if she's going to die, I might as well go with her and die too. We went to Nigeria, and these young, big men with M16s. I was convinced that I was right, she was wrong. We are going to die. And there were 2 or 3 episodes like that during that first trip. But by the end of the trip, I realized it was not God's sense of humor. God was very serious about it. And while nobody got better or saw better because they met Tom Lewis, I had the opportunity, while she was deep into surgery, meeting people with a mask on her face and scrub suits and all kinds of stuff. I had the ability to wander around. I had the opportunity to fall in love with these people, and that's really what happened. And that first experience springboarded me into being a big fan of doing mission work from then on. Going to daily mass was part of God's sense of humor for me. A few years ago, I made a Cursillo weekend, and for those of you who have done it, I'm sure you can relate to what I'm saying. And those of you who haven't, I strongly encourage, if you can, spending a few days with the Holy Spirit is just a tremendous, tremendous experience. Well, at the end of the retreat master said, now think about ways that you can improve on your daily prayer life. That's when I knew the sense of humor God was coming to play again. I'm living with a woman who goes to Mass every morning. Now, gee, what could I do? Gee, God, I wonder what, real funny, I wonder what I could do to improve my prayer life. And so I actually wrote it down, like I asked you to do. I wrote it down on this little prayer card. Go to daily Mass. Wow. When Kathy started going to daily Mass in the year 2000, we had made a trip to the Holy Land in that Jubilee year, and she committed to daily Mass at that time. Except, as any physician that's here knows, your schedule is so crazy, there was only really one Mass that worked for her, and that was at 6:15 in the morning. And I was missing our snuggling time. I wasn't really thinking about getting holier. It's like, oh, golly, honey, you know, I miss you. And, oh, by the way, God, it's no fun competing with you. Just in case you're not aware of that. how can I complain about her going to spend time with you? So anyway, so I wrote it down, and I started going to daily mass, and I hated it. Oh my gosh, 6:15. That means I actually had to get up like at 6 o'clock. So I started going to daily mass, and then meeting with a group of other folks who've made the Cursillo once a week as well. And one of the books we started studying in my Cursillo group was a book on what is in the Mass. Well, all kinds of things started running through my mind, my thoughts on daily Mass. And at about 1 month, I had gone from I can do it one more time. That's what I kind of just one more time. I can do it. Yes, I can do it today. One more time. And I really had my doubts that first month if I was going to be able to hang in there. And then it started getting easier, and I started to maybe learn a little bit more. But by about month 6, I would say, I couldn't wait to go to Mass. That daily opportunity to receive the body and blood of Christ. Oh, wow. And when the priest says, the Lord be with you and with your spirit, and let our spirit be lifted up, and the community of saints, the communion of saints, and the people at church, and I know Mom and Dad are there, and I know some of the people that I love dearly are there. I know Tracy Fulkerson, where are you? I heard that your table might be particularly rowdy because of being there. But your brother, Terry, was the first of our class to teach us a whole lot about dying with dignity. And I know Terry's there. And I can't wait. I can't wait to get to receive the Eucharist each day. I love going to daily Mass, and I really love going to daily Mass with you. But it did start with God's sense of humor. Gee, I wonder what I could do. The second behavior that I would attribute to my Cistercian roots is what I call saying yes to God's amazing grace. Now, I'm no theologian. Don't ask me to explain, St. Thomas Aquinas' 5 demonstrations of the existence of God, or maybe more modern day, even what C.S. Lewis was trying to say about it. But I will say this. Going back to you again, Abbot Dennis, I took your elective class on the Gospels, and I have thought about this so many times over the years since, that the Gospels alone, a good study of them alone, demonstrate that there was sufficient, ample evidence that Jesus Christ really did exist, and yet enough differences in those Gospels to substantiate also that those are 4 independent accounts. And that just keeps ringing over and over with me as I try to expand my pee-wee brain knowledge of my faith and my understanding of what God's asking us to do. And I thank you for those insights. And I probably did a terrible job of summarizing that course, but that's the part that stuck with me. The synoptic qualities of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Well, anyway, thank you. Father Ben Bradshaw, a dear friend of ours in Memphis, explained grace in a simple way that helped me understand. He said, pretend you've got a bucket, this big bucket, and it kind of represents the totality of your life. And there's a lot of stones and objects and all kinds of things filling up this bucket. Now take water and pour into that bucket and let it fill in all the crevices that these objects are not filling in. And that's grace. That's the grace that God gives you every day. Everyone's given that grace. Everyone's given that grace. But you got to say yes to that grace in order to go to the next level. How do ordinary people do extraordinary things? They say yes to God's grace on a daily basis. And saying yes to going to daily Mass was certainly one of the greatest things that I've ever said yes to. There is no doubt that the dark times of my life could not have I couldn't have survived them without God's grace. While Kathy was making the decision to go to daily mass after this wonderful trip to the Holy Land in 2000. And I, of course, came back from that same trip on a high. My mom went with us. It was a great trip. But within a few days of getting home, one of our sons attempted suicide. And the company that I'd given birth to 15 years earlier blew up. I wish I could sit here and say, yeah, I made this big, generous decision to leave this successful business world and dedicate my life to helping those poor people in Africa. But that's not how it happened. That's not how it happened. I didn't know what was up and what was down. And I don't really know how long it lasted, this stupor I was in. But I questioned my ability to be a father, my ability to be a CEO, a businessman of any kind, really. I knew I wouldn't starve. I mean, I had a wife that was making a good income. It wasn't that sort of a thing. It was, what's going on inside, and what am I supposed to be doing? What is this? So I really immersed myself into our mission work while I was trying to sort that all out. And God bless Kathy for hanging in there with me. I know it was painful for her too, but I was in so much pain I couldn't see the pain. It wasn't just my son that had attempted suicide. I know that. I knew things intellectually that I couldn't process. And at an emotional level, there's just no way I could live with it. Or live with myself. In all of my years, I had a things will always work out sort of a belief. But there came a time when I wasn't sure. Oh, and yes, our son survived it, and while he's still struggling, he certainly has made progress in his life. And I know businesses come and go, but that time, in hindsight, was really God again asking the question, will I accept His grace? Because that time, that incredible change in my life, it has been one of the greatest blessings that I've ever experienced. But I didn't see that way at first. So I immersed myself into our mission work, and that was taking place at the exact same time that this incredibly destroyed country of Sierra Leone was finally coming into peace, and we had a chance to start going there. And we were being asked to do things that we had never been asked before on any of our mission trips. We were being asked to make much more than a visit. We were being asked to make a commitment. Please, Tom, please, Kathy, please reach into your bag of resources and help our country. And Archbishop Joseph Gondo has become such a dear friend of ours, but it was he who said, our people out in the country need you. Yes, you're doing fine things here in the capital city of Freetown, where people have access. But a few hours from here, there's millions of people who have no access. And indeed, the sort of eye surgery that Kathy now does is repairing people's cataracts who've been blind for 20, 30 years, typically. Pretty average kind of stuff. I was able to help Kathy's practice expand. I had nothing else to do. So I'll use my business acumen as best I can while I'm trying to sort out how I feel about all this stuff. So her office expanded into 3 locations, from 1 up to 5 doctors, from 2. We added some surgical facilities, all the things that I knew how to do. I wasn't, I still didn't know what I was doing, but I was praying a lot, and golly, I don't know how, Kathy, I don't know how you did it, but you pulled me through too. And now we have this clinic in Sierra Leone that's been operating, pushing the better part of 6.5, 7 years now, and it's helping thousands of people. And they do get incredible care from Kathy and the team over there. And they do come to me and say, "Thank you, Mr. Tom. You bring fine women. You bring fine women to Africa." So for a guy who had to live with a lot of humility for what took place at the beginning of this millennium, I was sure getting a lot of praises that I didn't deserve, but I tried to explain, no, it's not me, and they wouldn't shake their head, listen to me, and then after I finished explaining it all, they would say, "Well, thank you, Mr. Tom, thank you." But again, I am blessed with the opportunity to wander around and fall in love with these people every time we're there. And they have taught us so much, to go and to work and live with people that have absolutely nothing, at least by our standards. No material stuff. And they begin each day in prayer. "God, thank you. Thank you for the breath in our lungs. Thank you for another day to honor and to serve you."
Yes.
It's so humbling. We have received so much more than we have given. And we'll give and give and give until we don't know how to give again. But we still receive so much more. They've taught us how to let go of this material world, the value of a simple life, the true relationship with God.
Yes.
The true relationship with God. They've taught us. I thought I knew a fair amount about that, being of these Cistercian roots. And I do know a bit about it. But I have lived it more with these people than at any point in my life, I'm sure. And have such an appreciation for the ministry of being present. They are so overjoyed that anybody would come and say, "Hey, how's it going today?" Someone would come from outside of their community that has some resources to help, that cared enough to just say, "Hey, how's it going today?" They are so joyful to just be recognized as human beings, as people of God. And this country is 95% Muslim, and this particular village is about half Muslim and half Christian, because the missionaries had a huge impact on Sarabu starting about 100 years ago. In fact, Archbishop Ganda's grandparents are Muslim. But they are brothers and sisters. They live together. They pray together. When we started doing our clinic, it was the patients that said, "Doctors, we haven't prayed yet." They reminded us. Each morning, that clinic begins with the Muslims and the Christians praying together. There are a number of people from the village that come to the clinic each day just to participate in the prayer service. And they pray together, and they hug each other, and they give each other a sign of peace. And then we begin our clinic. It's really rather quite wonderful. And I think of Pope Paul VI and his ideas on evangelization, where, deliver the good news to all strata of humanity, but preserve what is good and truthful in any religion, and let that be the foundation of perhaps their ultimate conversion. So we're not out there saying, Christian or Muslim and cutting their heads off or something if they don't say they're Christian. It's not that kind of evangelization, but by the example of our life. What an incredible example they have in Kathy. I mean, my salvation strategy is to stand up at Judgment Day and go, "Hey, I know this lady. I used to be married to her. Shouldn't I, just kind of slide in next to her? I can keep carrying her luggage." Kathy prays before every surgery. She is such a wonderful example of saying yes to the grace of God. But that kind of brings me full circle to the question I asked you to think about. Why these men? The men in this room, but those who have gone ahead of us. Great names: Ansel, Placid, Thomas, Henry, Lambert, Christopher, and of course Damien. Great men. And there must have been great men ahead of them reading about the persecution in Hungary that the men who came here were going through. What about the men that taught them? The men that looked tyranny in the face and said, you still gotta do it. You still gotta answer God's call. You still gotta say yes to God's grace. Those men that we will never know. Well, clearly, part of the reason these men are here is because they said yes to the grace of God. I love that my name is Thomas Paul. I've had the privilege of wandering through southern India and tracing the footsteps of Thomas and wandering around Greece, etc., to trace some of the footsteps of St. Paul. My Lord and my God. The doubts that Thomas has had, I really prayed to him, particularly in those dark times. I could relate to those doubts. But his ability to come down off that mountain in southern India, and march across the continent and baptize and baptize and baptize and convert and convert and convert is so inspiring. And St. Paul, with his talks of unconditional love that takes your ego out of it completely. It's not about you. It's about the other person. And what happens to you doesn't matter. What happens to you doesn't matter. It's what's with the other person. That love that Father Rock showed us every day of his life as our foremaster. God, I love you. God, I love you. So, why these men? Because these men lived and showed us unconditional love, whether we deserved it or not as students. There's the book where my Cursillo group is studying right now is Father Robert Barron's book on Catholicism. A great read. I would recommend to anyone if you're looking for one. And he says, faith, hope, and charity. Faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. Why? Why is love the greatest of these? And his suggestion is that when we get to heaven, we won't need faith or hope because we'll be living with God. And the essence of our relationship with God will be love. And love will continue. And I do think that is a beautiful, beautiful way to explain why love is the greatest of these. But I'll offer one more. I'll offer these men, these assertions, as one more example as to why love is the greatest of these. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I want to close with my promise to prayer. I've stolen a few lines from the Canticle of Mary and a few notes from John Michael Talbot. And it goes something like this. Holy, holy, holy is his name. Thank you all so very, very much.